Hello, good people, and thank you for once again tuning into the Iron Purpose podcast. This is officially episode 12, and I couldn't be more excited for the guest that I have today. You know, in the past 11 episodes, I only have one other female, my Aunt Rachel. So to have another guest with the female perspective on is pretty sweet, and this was a very, very inspirational episode. I got the chance to speak with Amy Labarre. She is in a pastoral role within the church that I attend. And in today's world, in the faith community and previously, there are some that believe that women don't have a place of leadership within the church. And there are some people even out there today that would say that women don't have a place in leadership in other numerous roles. And I wanted to get behind Amy's thought process on it because she is a very confident individual and a very strong individual, and she is a leader, and we get into that conversation. And so I wanted to pick her brain on that, and what an inspirational conversation. I myself being able to learn how to continue to be confident in my own abilities and not worry what other people think when I know that it aligns with what I truly believe that I'm supposed to be doing and what I truly believe that God has planned for my life. And we dive into that conversation, those topics, and different negativity that she's faced over the years, and how she's able to continue moving forward and continuing to spread the love of God and overall positivity in a world that's very negative. It's like I said, a great conversation, and I'm excited for you guys to hear it. This is the Iron Purpose Podcast, episode number 12, Amy Labarre. Stay sharp, everybody. All right. Amy, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. I'm excited to have you on. We were just talking a little bit beforehand, and this is going to be episode 12.
Okay.
And you are my second female guest. So I'm super excited about that, to get another female perspective, mixing it up a little bit, keeping it exciting.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah. So what you been up to lately? How's the new year been treating you?
Good. I mean, I feel like we should already be further through January. I don't know why time seems to be moving slowly, but it's been good. A new year, and I always like to do new things and kind of have a fresh perspective on things. And cleaning things out at home and cleaning my office at work, and typical new year things.
Yes. Are you typically a New Year's resolutioner? Do you
No.
No,
because I would just break it.
So you just keep it simple, though. Hey, it's a new time of year. I can tidy up some stuff, organize some stuff, and then get ready for the new year. Normally, there's been times in the past where I have been, and then it's just kind of like, and so it's like, just find little things that you can do.
Right.
Yeah, somebody had asked me, and I couldn't think of anything. But one of the things was, like, I like to go to the gym as much as I can, and I don't have like a routine warm up.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of go for a run and then I get into it. So one thing was like, all right, I'm going to be more meticulous when it comes to my warm up at the gym. Stretch a little bit more, get my joints and everything working good beforehand. But it's not really a new thing because I'm already in the gym. It's just like you said, kind of fine tuning a couple little things. But.
Yeah, and not being very specific about it. Like, I want to move my body more this year. I mean, so that could be a lot of things. So it's very open-ended.
That's a very good point, because then you're not setting yourself up or biting off more than you can chew. It's just a little bit here.
Right.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So for those who don't know who you are, the floor is yours to kind of just talk about your story as far back as you want to go, and share as much as you want in detail or not. It's just totally up to you. And then, like I said, with the goal of just somebody hearing the conversation and maybe being sharpened by it, as iron sharpens iron, one person sharpens another. So that's kind of the goal with it.
Okay.
If you got something, take it away.
Sounds great. Well, I'm Amy Labarre, and I am the community life pastor at Timberwood Church in Nisswa, Minnesota. I've been here for 11 years, and 3 years now in the capacity of community life pastor, and 8 years prior to this in the role of the children's ministry coordinator. And before I was at Timberwood, I was in public education, and I started my career as a home economics teacher. And I was teaching in Pequot, junior high and high school. I didn't love teaching the foods classes, but I loved teaching things like family life and sewing and interpersonal relations and those types of classes. And I pretty quickly, I loved teaching because I really wanted to help students be productive members of families and society. And so I felt like the skills that I um, wanted them to have were going to be helpful for them navigating life. And so I really love that. But I found that I really wanted to be more influential on a broader scale. And so like influential in the school at the, school building level and at the district levels. And so I took on some roles as a leader in public education. And then I ended up getting a master's degree in leadership. And then after that, I pursued my principal and my K-12 principal and superintendent's licenses. And so what grew from being influential in a student's life grew to be influential in an entire school district level. And so my very first administrative job was as the director of Cross Lake Community School in Cross Lake, and I was there for 3 years. And that was like baptism by fire. I was in charge of things that I didn't really think I had business being in charge of, like food service or I was a transportation coordinator and had to help figure out bus routes and bus stop times and that kind of thing. But yeah, that really was a crazy time in my life. And while I was there for those 3 years, I had my last two kids. I have 4 kids. My husband, Steve, and I have been married for 25 years. And I have 4. I have a 23-year-old, a 20-year-old, soon to be 21-year-old, and I have a 18-year-old and a 17-year-old. And so life was busy even when I was leading in schools. After I was at Cross Lake Community School, I went back to Pequot Lakes, and I was the curriculum coordinator there. I was the first female administrator in the Pequot Lakes School District at the district level. And so that was an interesting opportunity as well to influence curriculum and the resources that teachers used to teach kids. And then I had the opportunity to have a little stint in the middle school office as the principal because one of our administrators was deployed. And so I was the middle school principal for just a little over half a year. And I actually really loved it. I love the middle school kids because they were still childlike and not quite too adult-like, where they didn't want to interact with adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that. And so I actually had asked, and the board had approved for me to stay on as a middle school principal. But right after that happened, I was recruited by the Palbian Cooperative, and I was hired as a continuous improvement consultant. So basically what I did was I looked at student achievement data, so all of the standardized tests that they did at the grade level and district level. And then I basically took that information and worked with district leadership teams to determine how we could improve the education system to improve student achievement. So I did that for 2 years. And then my job was cut, and I was faced with what am I going to do? Do I want to go back into being an administrator or a superintendent or something like that? And Steve and I and the kids had just started attending Timberwood in fall of 2013. And no, it must have been fall of 2012. So we had just started attending. And then after Christmas that year, we became members. And John Just, our lead pastor, whispered in my ear one day that he wanted to have coffee with me because they had this vacancy in children's ministry, and wanted to pick my brain about who I knew in the area that might be a good fit. So those conversations went on for probably a couple of months because I didn't really realize that actually he was tapping me. And I didn't really realize right away that it was God that was also tapping me and calling me into ministry either, because it was so far off my radar. So yeah, I think one of the questions that you had given me was, how did I know my call into ministry, or how did I recognize it? Well, one door closed and I had many open. And I think just slowly over time, God made it very clear to me that this is where He wanted me. I did not want to go into ministry because honestly, it meant that I was going to take a pretty significant pay cut. And we had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle. I love people and I love helping people, but ministry was not ever. And I didn't feel equipped. Like, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I, started attending a Baptist church with my husband when we were dating, and then like came to Christ while we were dating, and really just my faith started developing and growing when I was 26 years old. And so I didn't feel equipped to be in ministry at all. So I kind of tried to reject it. And then I would ask people what they thought. My husband, of course, he was like, yeah, no, we can't afford for you to make that kind of a career change. But then I started talking to some other people from the education world and talking to them about the opportunities that I had. And one person in particular, Chuck Arns, I worked with him at Pequot. He was a middle school principal for a while. And then he was the superintendent in Pillager. And I really respected him. And I went and met with him one day, and I just said, hey, I knew he was a follower of Christ. And I said, here's what's going on. And here are the opportunities that I have. And he just looked at me and he said, Amy, if you think that God is calling you into ministry and you turn around and walk away from that call, what do you think your life will be like then, regardless of what you choose to do? And I was like, oh, crap. Like, okay. So, yeah, I felt it then. Then it finally had dawned on me after a couple of cups of coffee with John that he actually was hoping that I would consider it. I was slow to warm up after I had given him names of people even. Yeah, and then my husband was still not sold, and he was kind of the holdout. And to be really honest, I kind of was like glad that he didn't want me to do it, because I was afraid. I felt unequipped. I felt, I didn't want to take a pay cut. I didn't want to change my lifestyle. And then he and I went to a marriage retreat. And there was a time of worship, and there were like literally 800 people in this worship space. And all of a sudden I look over to see Steve like sitting down, and he's sobbing. And I sit down next to him and I'm like, what's going on? Are you okay? And he looked up at me and he said, I'm standing in the way of what God is calling you to do, and I can't. You're supposed to do this. And I was like, okay, here we go. And so I just moved forward with the process of coming on staff at Timberwood, and that was 11 and a half years ago.
And here you are.
Here I am. Yes. Yeah.
What a beautiful experience, and I've had the pleasure of being able to be in an environment like that where there's just people and just pouring out their hearts in song.
Mhm.
I think of I went to a young adults camp. I think it was Camp Lebanon. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Um,
used to go there with our kids when they were little.
beautiful. And they had this big fire pit, and like everybody
Mhm.
would go around the fire pit and they'd just sing. And I remember even too, like growing up or going to, I went to Pensacola Christian
Mhm.
college for a few years, and in the dorm we'd have like I think it was once a week, maybe it was every night we'd sit out in a hallway as men in our dorm, and we'd all start with a hymn, and it was just a cappella, just a bunch of guys
Mhm.
just sitting there, just forgetting about everything else going on, and it really does take away all the mud and all the layers to just get you
Yeah.
right down to face to face with yourself and with God.
Yep.
And so I can only imagine,
Yeah.
what you're with your husband and yourself were experiencing
Yeah.
during that time of everybody singing. You're just like, oh, you
Yes.
just kind of melt and go, okay, here you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So had you just explained all these different positions of leadership.
Mhm.
You were a teacher. You
Mhm.
moved into like or you said then you got your master's in, you say your
Leadership.
master's in leadership.
Mhm.
Where did that come from? Was there a specific point in your life as you were a youngster where you were put in a role of leadership, or you're just like, I really feel called to this, or what do you know of a
Yeah.
time where it kind of clicked?
Um, I think I've always kind of been led to be responsible for things and be responsible for people. Um, I like to be involved in, like, if there were group projects, like I would take the lead on it. It was just my nature. Um, I'm a firstborn and I'm type A. And if people are familiar, with some of those personality things, I think my personality really just lent itself to leadership. It kind of evolved, Um, I didn't think about myself as a leader. I was just, I think, being who I would naturally was.
Mm-hmm.
And when I
Mm-hmm.
was in the classroom and wanting to be influential um, at a higher level in regards to like how the school system ran or how things were organized or whatever. I just wanted to be influential so that I could find a way to be impactful ultimately. And so I think some of the leadership roles, like um, I don't remember all the leadership roles that I had as a teacher in the building or in the district, but somebody just said to me, like, why don't you get your master's degree? You're a leader anyway. Um, so I did, and then I thought I was going to be done, and then my leadership involvement grew, and then people started encouraging me to think about getting an administrative license because um, yeah, I think because I was just interested in being influential on a broader scale and for good, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
remember saying to people like, I want to be a leader in public schools that is not going to be political, and I'm going to, do what's right for the kids and do what's right for the teachers, and so yeah, that was really my motivation to
Mm-hmm.
keep going in that capacity. Yeah.
It's beautiful how you said it's naturally just you. So
Mm.
you're just being yourself, and you're able to use yourself for those things. I can think of, um, I was at a friend's house. It was the night before my brother's wedding. We were at his now brother-in-law's house, and there was a little sign in their house, and they sell honey. They make their own honey, and they sell their own honey. Rick's Raw Honey is what it is. So if you're interested in honey, hit me
Little
up.
commercial spot.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's Elijah Rick, awesome guy. They make awesome honey. But he has a little sign in their bathroom, and there's a little bee, and it just said "Be you,"
Hmm.
and that stuck with me because
Hmm.
a lot of times people get so concerned on how they can do all these different
Yeah.
things, and even like your master's degree, like, oh, I got to get my master's degree so I can do this and that, and it seemed like you were already living in those roles, acting
Mhm.
as if you already had the master's degree, and that master's degree didn't make you.
Right.
You
Right.
made that master's degree in a way, like you got that, and it's like, well, I'm
Mhm.
still me without this. Like
Yes. Yeah.
I'm still able to be myself. So
Yes. Yeah.
that's super neat.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that master's degree helped me live into myself more,
Hmm.
and then just gave me more experience and more broad. understanding of leadership in an educational type of setting.
Right. Fine-tuned your
Yep.
skills and gave you more
Yep.
tools. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a teacher, and now, working with so many kids and now moving into a position where you're dealing with a lot of adults and
Hmm.
stuff that they're dealing with too. Have you been able to use those same skills with kids to now
Hmm.
move it into dealing with adults? And do you see,
Yeah.
what that kind of looks like?
Yeah. I think, well, one of the cool things is I'm teaching on Wednesday nights now for a while because Pastor Eric is on sabbatical, and I
Hmm.
chose to teach through the book of Hosea. And so I get to do it from the beginning to the end. And so I'm thinking about how to teach and how to help people, really grasp what God is trying to say through Hosea. Hosea is a hard book. It's harsh language. It's got a very graphic depiction of unfaithfulness in the context of marriage. And but what I've found myself doing is thinking, okay, I'm a visual learner, and so I think churches oftentimes will focus on teaching adults in, the typical traditional um, oral teaching type of thing where I'm going to tell you and you're going to listen.
Hmm.
Um, but what I have done already is incorporate some other um, mediums, like using a video from the Bible Project to introduce the book of Hosea, having diagrams that are available for people. Listening, I had the first 2 weeks, we listened to the whole book of Hosea being read. So listening to it being read rather than reading it yourself. So, yeah, I think that actually, once a teacher, always a teacher. Like, you can't take the teacher out of me. My brain is always thinking about how can I make this most accessible to everybody, regardless of whether they're adult or a child. Yeah.
Well, honestly, too, because I've got the pleasure of going to a couple Wednesday night services, and I would really like to get back into it. But because you do have a wide variety of
Hmm.
people from all different walks of life,
Yeah.
and different ethnicities or age groups or whatever. So being able
Hmm.
to have something kind of ready and accessible for everybody, it
Yep.
really does. It really does make a difference, and it's cool when they're able to share their perspectives on things too. Because I may view something differently than somebody who's has 80 or 90 years of experience in
Yeah.
life, and
Hmm.
getting
Exactly.
that group together is pretty cool.
Right, right. And that discussion part is part of community, right? Because we learn in community and we're meant to be in community. And so, just this whole idea of sharing our experiences, sharing how we experience scripture, how God speaks to us through scripture. We learn like this. That's exactly what you're talking about in with your podcast, Iron Sharpens Iron, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's very much a educational type of model.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
And biblical, of course.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm gonna get selfish here and ask a question for myself.
Yeah.
When it comes to your kids and
Mhm.
sending them to,
Mm.
picking a school,
Yeah.
I'm myself and my wife are
Yep.
gonna have a baby here in March, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things we talked about is, okay, what are we gonna do? Where are we gonna send our kid
Yeah.
when it comes to like the public schools?
Yeah.
Have there ever been? Were there any? Are your kids in the public schools?
Mhm.
Stuff.
All of them. Yep.
Were there any reservations
Mhm.
with it, and what do you think it looks like to help
Mhm.
guide them, through? And I just had this conversation with my uncle last night. Guide them through, life and maybe the ups and downs and maybe the bumps that a public school may have, opposed
Yeah.
to like homeschooling them.
Yep.
And I I was homeschooled till seventh grade, and then I went to Lake Region,
Mhm.
graduated from there. So I was always getting faith based
Yeah.
teaching,
Yep.
but I mean, it still wasn't perfect. There was still
Yep.
plenty of, being exposed to different things. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I think education is not a one size fits all, for one thing. Um, I think that if one of my kids needed to be in a different kind of setting other than public school, we would have made that decision. Um, I, yeah, I think I really I think there's a lot of pressure on families to make the right decision, right?
Hmm.
And the right decision is whatever is going to be right for you. And as long as you're not stuck in it and you're willing to pivot when it doesn't work,
Hmm.
or it isn't quite what you thought it was going to be, that's okay. Um, so I would say that families have to be super flexible about it. Um, um, I, even though I was a teacher, I don't think that I would have felt equipped to be a homeschooling parent,
Right.
which, is not, would I homeschool now? Maybe. I don't know. Um, but, one of the things that somebody said to me early on when I became the curriculum person at Pequot, somebody from church said to me, "Oh, good, you can get rid of all of the science curriculum that's teaching evolution." And I said, "Well, first of all, people have to understand that the state has standards
Right.
and it's law, and local districts don't get to make as many decisions about curriculum or standards and what is taught than as people think that they have control over." Um, and the other thing is, my response to that was, as Christians, as followers of Christ, um, we have to be careful about sheltering our kids too much
Mhm.
from the world. Because when we shelter our kids too much and we create this perfect environment, this perfect Christian environment for them, the way we think things are supposed to be according to God, according to Scripture, which varies, as we know, depending on who you're talking to. Um, we still need to prepare them to come up against positions and opinions and ideas that don't match our Christian thought. And
Mhm.
so I think that when people have their kids in public education, it's a great opportunity to talk about the things that they're going to come up against in the world outside of, because public school is still pretty safe um, space, right? Um,
Mhm.
it certainly isn't the wild, open world by any means. But it is very different than when you were in school or when I was in school. It's very, very different. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think that we just have more opportunity to talk to our kids about, you know, how does this match? How does this come up against our values as a family, and what our thoughts are about what God desires of us and what God desires for humanity and what He has created. And so
Mhm.
I don't think that, yeah, I think there's opportunity when your kids are in public schools. Um,
Mm.
you know, yeah, there are some things that my kids have come home with, and I have said, "Excuse me, where did that come from? Because that's not in this house." Um, and yeah, there's a lot of influence from school, and I think in retrospect, there's more influence um, with friends than I realized. So I think everybody is worried about what their kids are being taught. I think we should probably pay more attention to who they're hanging out with and what their friends are doing and what their friends' families are doing.
Mhm.
Um, and, just being more aware of who our kids are hanging out with,
Right.
really.
And what does that look like for you? Do you have have them have the kids their friends come over to the house and kind of show them how you guys do things at your home,
Well,
or?
I I really we're pretty cautious about our kids when they had friends and would go over to other people's houses. I want to know whose house they're at. I want to
Mhm.
know who the parents are. Um, and I want parents home, especially when they were younger. Um,
Mhm.
we didn't we didn't do sleepovers unless we actually really knew the people
Right.
and the family. But now they're older. Like, I mean, we only have one kid at home now. He's
Sure.
17 and he's never
Right.
4. And it's like, I mean, I think he wishes that we would just back off and get lazy about parenting, but it's like, I don't know these people, and so until you
Mhm.
bring these buddies over, you're not gonna go sleep over or hang out or go ice fishing or whatever with them. So I think it's just being involved and knowing who your kids are
Mm.
hanging out with.
Being involved. I love that. And I also like what you said about values, like setting
Mhm,
up the values as like a foundation when they're younger,
mhm,
and because then then the outside world, the stuff that can negatively impact them, isn't just like a key to their mind. It's more of an opportunity for it, like
Mhm.
a challenge and an opportunity to learn. And it kind of reminded me of like when it's like election time and you have
Yes.
friends on Facebook. Like I don't
Yes.
know if you have social media, but and there's been so many times where I'm like, I don't agree with this person, or
Mhm.
like when there was, any controversial thing that somebody has an opinion on Facebook, they're spewing their mind, and you're just like, oh, all right, unfriend, and then you're just like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, who am why? What good is it going to do for me if all I'm seeing is just everything that I want to see and nothing else?
Mhm.
Because then you don't have that opportunity to be challenged
Right.
and to learn, and also like if you have that counter argument, it also sharpens your understanding of why you believe what you believe.
Right.
So I love that you made
Yeah.
that correlation. It's establishing those values as a
Mhm.
family and then having them, go from
And
there.
having to reestablish them too,
Mm.
right? Because and really talking about them in different contexts. So I think, you know, it's not that you establish them and create this list and put it on your fridge for, your kids to see. When the time in the instances or the situations or the circumstances come up, you have to talk about them in whatever context they apply. And so, um, yeah, I think really being involved and knowing what your kids are up to, having them involved in different things. I think idle hands um, are dangerous. I think, we can over involve our kids too. I think we have to be super cautious about that as well. Um, which then leads to us being over scheduled and just exhausted running kids here and there. We had a rule our kids could only be in one activity at a time. So and we also had a rule that if our kids were at basketball games or volleyball or whatever, and they were tournaments or that kind of thing, my husband and I went together. We didn't split up, like one go to a volleyball game and one go to a basketball game. And we just told our kids, if you need a parent there at every single competition, um, that's not going to happen because dad and I are going to go together um,
Hmm.
to your competitions and your tournaments. But we'll take turns. It'll be even. But that was really important for Steve and I, um, for as a married couple to be united and be seen together and united in supporting our kids. So,
Mm.
yeah.
I love that. And this is a
Hmm.
good, I think, segue into something else that I kind of want to ask you through this. And sometimes this can be a very controversial topic, but when it does come to your marriage with your husband and
Hmm.
with you growing up with such a leadership
Hmm. Yeah.
filled, just
Yeah.
just with purpose, like
Yeah.
how did that work? When you
Yeah.
first started dating your husband,
Yeah.
and like even moving into your relationship, if you don't mind me asking, and how that with the stereotypical husband and wife roles, like
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people say, like, well, the wife has to submit to the husband and do what he says. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
could touch on that and kind
Sure
of bring
can.
light. I'd love to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah, I sure can. So, I was raised in the Catholic Church, or raised going to the Catholic Church. And so this idea of um, male and female roles was really new to me in when I started dating my husband. And my mom worked outside the home. She was a nurse, and my dad worked. And all of the women in my life worked outside the home. I can't remember anybody being a stay-at-home mom. Um, so, um, yeah, I think that as my faith developed um, in a more conservative Baptist environment, I did want to do the right thing according to what I was being taught, which was male headship, where the husband is the head of the household. Um, and I understood submission in a way that meant, well, if my husband is loving me as Christ loved the church, then it shouldn't be a problem for me to want to be,
Mm.
submit. Um, And nobody really talked about the fact that I was kind of an in-charge person. Um, and that was always really confusing to me. And I also, so I lived with this I quietly like lived with this dissonance because I had been taught one thing by the church, that women should, not necessarily be in charge. But by nature, and I was in a career and on a path that put me in charge of men. And I supervised men. And so I just lived with this dissonance, and nobody ever really challenged us about it. And then, there were times when um, it was very obvious that people didn't really understand or know the true dynamics of our marriage or our family because, there was a time when I made more money than my husband. Um, and there were times when I would travel for work and people would ask my husband's parents at church, well, if Amy's traveling, who's taking care of the kids? And his dad or his mom would say, their dad, Steve, is taking care of
Right.
the kids. Um, and, we had this rule about like dads don't babysit, dad's dad, right? Um, so yeah, so I really lived with this dissonance for a really, really long time. And I kept quiet about it because nobody pushed me on it, or challenged us in our marriage about it. Um, and yeah, so I think that I always wondered if it was okay. But I also had this inner part of me that I think unconsciously or consciously, I don't know, chose to follow God and what he was calling me to in my different positions of leadership. And so it brought me to these positions that I was supervising men. And I don't know what to say about that. and and um and later I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about um God's relationship, and use of women throughout the biblical narrative too. And so I know you want to talk about that a little bit more too, but um I realized that my husband is like a victim of this male headship thing and these expectations that have been put on men to be these spiritual leaders of the household, and that's not his gifting. Like he's a wonderful man. He's gentle, and he's not competitive. He doesn't have anything to prove. He's not macho. He's not controlling in any way. He's not gifted by God to lead in the way that we were told he was supposed to. So we had to get to the place where we were okay with that. And this works for us. Like
Mhm.
I was gifted as a leader, and this is what I'm called to do. And so I'm going to do it. And it doesn't really matter what you think about it because I'm not willing to be disobedient to what God calls
Mhm.
me to. It's really,
Mhm.
for me, it's that simple. And
Yeah,
so, yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
It's yeah, when you feel called and you are in a position where you really truly feel like God wants you to be in this role, or even in your marriage. And I really like how you said too, like your husband just isn't called to have that stand and have that position, and that's okay.
hmm,
Because a lot of times we do see, men saying, well, you have to go to the gym or you're not a man. You have to go hunt and you have to fish and you have
yeah,
to, just be a
yeah,
freakish animal.
yeah,
Like I've
yeah,
got I know plenty of people in my life who just aren't that way either.
yes,
And
yeah,
they are special in their own
yes,
craft and their own
yeah,
leading in their own ways, I guess.
yep,
So,
yep, yeah,
so it just, so it's cool. And it's almost
yeah.
like God knew what he was doing when he put the two of you together. Isn't
He
that kind of
did.
funny?
He did. He did. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
And then my next question was going to be, how have you
mhm,
faced, that
yeah.
negativity or that backlash? And was there ever a time where you questioned it? And it kind of sounds like you did a little bit,
Mhm.
but kind of
Yeah.
came to a point where you're like, well, if this is what I really feel led to do, then what
Yeah.
does your opinion matter anyway?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's that's it's more like it sounds like an issue, not an ish me. Like I can.
Ah, I like that.
One
I
of my
like that.
friends told me
Yeah,
that
that's
one
an
once.
issue. I like that. I'm gonna use
Yeah.
that. Yeah. When I was in children's ministry, um, well, I should say this. In June of this year, I graduated from seminary with a master's degree in theology and ministry.
Oh my
And
goodness. How many do you
so,
have? Is that 3 master's degrees?
yeah, about
That's
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. So I graduated, and that was a really profound experience for me to go to seminary. And I didn't really ever think that I would go back to school, because I started school when our oldest started college, and I'm like, what is
What are we
happening?
doing?
What is happening? Um, but through my education at Fuller, I chose Fuller Seminary because one, it's a multi-denominational seminary, which meant in my mind that I was going to be taught how to think theologically, not what to think theologically. So because it was multi-denominational, I didn't want to be like pigeonholed into one theological, kind of position. And the other thing is that they are pretty renowned for supporting women in leadership roles in the church. Um, and so I didn't want to fight about being there. I didn't want to be in classes with majority men and have to justify why I think I'm called to ministry, why I think I'm called to teach and preach in the evangelical church. And so that's why I chose Fuller. Well, while being there, many of my classes helped me to understand and really affirm my call, because what I wanted to do was study and learn and read everything I could about every woman in the biblical narrative that I could, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't getting this wrong. Because if I'm not supposed to teach and preach, then I won't do it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of had this little mission. Um, and what I realized is that I had no excuse not to lead. Because if you look at the biblical narrative and you look at all of the women that God used throughout history,
Mm.
from Deborah to Mary Magdalene, like all of these women, there's no way that I can prescribe to this idea that women should not be leading in churches, because
Mm-hmm.
God used women in really significant ways to
Mm-hmm.
move his desire, to move his will for humanity forward. And so I feel completely justified um, and defended through scripture to do what I'm doing. Um, and yeah, there have been people who have gotten up and walked out when I have preached. And it used to bother me and make me doubt a little bit. But I'm past that now. I'm so certain. Like, I'm so certain
Mm.
of what God has called me to do here. And I'm so certain of how God uses women and did and will continue to. It doesn't bother me. If somebody gets up and walks out, if somebody doesn't want to participate in something that I'm teaching or leading or doing, um, I feel sorry for them, because I think that there is a perspective that women offer that has been missing from the church for a really, really long time. Um, and it doesn't detract from the biblical narrative. Um, it adds to it.
Mm-hmm.
It gives it more dimension. It gives it more, like, yeah, it just gives it more a value of equality
Mm-hmm.
between men and women. And
Right.
so, yeah, but I did have to do some work, and I did have to, like, kind of unlearn some bad behaviors that I had working with men and other, in my previous career. because I have always once I left the classroom, I have always, but I have been working in male dominated fields. And so I might be the only woman in the room. And so what I started to do to learn to keep my seat at the table, so to speak, is I shed my womanness. I shed my identity as a mom. I shed my identity as a wife. And I worked really hard not to look smarter than any man that I was working with or more achieved. Always shared credit, um, out of fear of what if I didn't, you know, so that it would be disrespectful or something like that. And so I've had to unlearn some unfortunate um, behavior of my own, to really find my authentic self and
Yeah.
bring my authentic voice to the table, because it was lost for a while because I was
Yeah.
afraid to bring the true, my true authentic leadership voice forward. Um, yeah, how would men receive it? Because it was always in the company of men,
Mm-hmm.
in many of my careers, or I
Right.
mean, positions prior to this. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's been a journey.
Man, I I knew I was gonna like this conversation, but my wife Courtney, she was in a kind of a similar role as far as leadership goes. Well, she worked for a medical device company, and it was heavily dominated by older men
Mhm.
as doctors, and she would have to go into these operating rooms and pretty much sell their product to them, and they're like, well, what do you know, you're just a 20-some-year-old
Girl,
female, you're in
right?
the wrong place, yeah, get out
Yeah,
of here. And she, from my perspective and from my view, she took it really hard in the beginning, like, how am I supposed to do this if they write me off from the start? And
yeah,
now she's working at Sourcewell, and she's a director now there, and so she's in a similar kind of
yeah,
scenario where she is
hmm,
leading men and being a leader as well, and
yeah,
confidently doing it too.
yes,
And I really love what you said, like when you were in that room with all these other men and they're giving their opinions, and you're kind of keeping your mouth shut and kind
mhm,
of, you don't want to stand out, and you just kind of want to, you were kind of selling yourself short,
yeah,
and you were like, I'm doing, I can see yourself kind of processing this, like, I am, I'm doing God a disservice.
yes,
I'm doing the
100%.
people that, my
Hmm.
family a disservice by
Yeah,
not being my true
hmm,
authentic self.
yep,
And I don't know why my brain went here, but I thought of like Tom Brady. I don't know if you're a sports fan and all, but Tom Brady, very, very successful quarterback. When he
yep,
was coming out of college, people had him written off. He was drafted in like the 6th round. He was a tall, skinny, lanky little thing, and like doesn't look like he should have been a quarterback. And if he would have been in the room and listened to all these other people tell him, hey, you're not qualified for this, let these other big stronger guys do it, the people that know what they're doing, if he would have listened to them,
right,
you know he wouldn't have had 7 Super Bowl rings, whatever,
right,
how many MVPs,
right,
and wouldn't have had the success that he had.
right, right.
Not saying you're going to go on to win a Super Bowl, but
Probably not. Probably not.
you probably would. But the Super Bowl, I guess, of your own life, like
Yeah,
being confident and saying, I'm going to come up here and, if you want to get up and walk out while I'm doing this, that's,
yeah,
you're also missing out on an opportunity to hear what God has. Like, if you're going to
yeah,
get up, if you're going to turn the TV off when Tom Brady's on, like, you're going to
yeah,
miss out on a really cool opportunity to be entertained and watch a really good game of football. So,
right,
like,
right, right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Interesting perspective, but that's
yeah,
it's cool when you kind of share the story of how you were defeated and you were like, man, I want to get in the game, but
hmm,
people are saying that I can't. And then you
yeah,
say, you know what?
yeah,
This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Coach is
yeah,
telling me that I need to get in the game, so I'm going to listen to God.
yeah, yeah. I'm just completely, I think there's members of my husband's family that are concerned, about my decision to be a leader in the church and preach. Um, and, we don't talk about it. But I know that there's, strong feelings about it. But at the end of the day, my response, and I know that they respect and love me, I'm completely unwilling to not live into what God is calling me to.
Hmm.
And if that makes people uncomfortable, I don't know what to say about that.
That's for them to carry around, I guess. That's a weight that you do
Yeah.
not carry. Yeah, here
Yeah,
you
I
go.
just can't.
Have fun with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want
Yeah.
to put it down, we're having fun over here. Like
Yeah,
that
right.
looks really
Yeah.
heavy.
Come on and join me. We are having fun. Right. Yeah.
When it comes to like role models in your life, I know
Mhm.
you kind of said you spoke with Chuck Arns a little bit to pick his
Yeah.
brain, and
Yeah.
if it's the same one, I think I know who he is. He I think used to be the principal for Lake Region.
He was,
Okay,
yes.
so I
Yep.
know some of his family.
Yep. Yep.
But was there anybody else, whether it's if you knew them in person or people that you looked up to as kind of a role model or a mentor to help you,
Mhm.
find that confidence in your role or just growing up?
Um,
Anybody stick out?
you know, I don't really remember thinking about a specific person that I wanted to be like or follow. And honestly, there isn't one very close where I am now because there are very few females preaching in evangelical churches in this area. I think,
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing to go to people will say, well, there's somebody at the Lutheran church up the road and down in Baxter. And well, the Lutheran and Methodist churches have been ordaining women for years. The
Mm.
difference is that I'm in an evangelical church that has, many denominations been really strong in this male headship where women can't be leaders. And if they are leaders, they're only leaders because they're under the direction of a male. But they're so there's these stipulations for why they get to be in the role that they are. Um, so there aren't very many role models for this near me right now. I think that I would have to drive down to the Twin Cities to find somebody a female who is preaching and teaching and leading in an evangelical church. Um, but I hope to be that for other girls and other
I was
women,
just gonna
right?
say.
So
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't have to be this way. And so I just think about women who have been afraid to try something. They're not sure if they should, or they're working to discern you know the direction for their life or what God is calling them to. Like i I want to be inspiring to them. And not that like you can put anything you put your mind to, not like that. That's true. But how is it that we discern God's will, even if it's unpopular, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who am I hurting actually? Like, who's being harmed by hearing my voice from behind the pulpit,
Mm-hmm.
and who's being glorified?
Mm.
I feel real confident that I'm on the right side of that.
Mm. I just got goosebumps.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It it really is. It's like who? Yeah, man. I'm not even gonna comment on that. That was perfect. That's. Have you ever thought about like writing a book?
No, but I've said no to a lot of things that I ended up doing because I said no, I wasn't ever going to go back to school, and I got a master's degree again. So, yeah, no, I mean, I think that more women should write about their experiences in the church
Mhm.
and the journey um, that they have traveled. Yeah,
Mm.
maybe. I'm not gonna. You know what? I will never say never, but right now I don't think so.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we can agree on that.
Okay.
If you do, though, I want the first one. I want the first
Okay.
copy. All right.
Sounds great. You heard it here first.
Yes. All right. I just got a few more things. We're getting
Mhm.
pretty close to wrapping up, and it's been an awesome, awesome time. Let's see which one I want to go with. We can do this one quick. When it comes to kind of staying sharp and helping other people, because you
Yeah.
seem like obviously you're just always there to be able to help somebody. I feel like if anybody walked into your office, you'd be like,
Yeah.
"Sit down. What can we
Yes.
do?
Yeah.
What do
Mhm.
you do to be prepared for that kind of thing?" And then also going from maybe helping people who are going through different things
Mhm.
in their lives, and then you got to go home.
Yeah.
maybe a little different now than it was a few
Yeah.
years ago when all your kids were at home,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
managing all of that as well.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, to be really honest with you, I feel like God has equipped me and prepared me to carry um people's burdens without taking them on.
Mm,
So like I can hear people's really hard things and not own them or carry them home with me. I honestly feel like that is a gift that God, a provision that God gives me every day. Um, Very rarely do I lay awake worrying about somebody that I, you know, have intersected with. Um, I feel like that's a gift. I feel like God protects me from taking on other people's um, problems and burdens. So there's that. Um, I do feel protected. The other thing is, so how do I equip myself? I just I'll tell you what, sometimes there are people that come in my office and I do not know how to be supportive and how to be helpful. And so I will always ask people, what is it that you need me to be for you? Like, how can I support you? Do you need me to listen to you? Do you need me to brainstorm with you? Do you need me to help you problem solve? Do you need me to tell you what to do? Because I can do any of them.
mm-hmm,
And for a long time, my default was to tell people what to do. um, but I feel like that, really left no space for the Holy Spirit to be at work.
mm,
And so now I ask people how I can support them. And then when I'm with people, I'm praying. So, like, I've learned to be in the presence of people and the presence of God at the same time. And so when I have somebody in here, I'm listening and I'm also listening to God and praying and asking for Him to guide me or guide us. Um, I had the most beautiful example a couple of weeks ago where um, it just felt like I wasn't being helpful after an hour and a half. And this woman was going to um, go, we were going to end our time together. And she said one last thing. And I had been praying the whole time, and I really felt like I didn't help her very much. I had given her some, ideas for relaxing and, um, just trying to meditate on God's word and that kind of thing. And she said one last thing to me, and I just all of a sudden got like these goosebumps, this feeling. And and God was like, "That's it." And I was like, "Wait a minute. What did you just say?" And she repeated it and I said, "That's it. That's the source of your anxiety and your panic. Like what that person said to you has been harmful." And so she just started crying and
mm,
she was like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." And like in the moment, like she felt this burden lift. She physically felt like um relief, like a physical relief from this burden she was carrying. And that was not me. Like that was not me at all. Like I didn't say anything to make her say that last thing to me. But I think that was the power of prayer and the
mm,
power that we have being present with people and the Holy Spirit, God at the same time. So we have to pay attention. And so I'm always paying attention to the people that I'm with and whatever God is trying to communicate to me and to that person. And so um, I guess I don't go in or prepare myself in any way other than I am expectant um, that God will work between us, me and the person that I'm meeting with. Um, yeah, I just trust that completely. So,
mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's awesome too when you have that perspective to be able to look out for opportunities that God might have for us, because we can go throughout our entire day and be like, oh, why is this happening to me? And God, why don't you just show me something? And He's up there like, I am, like
I'm
right here
trying.
and right there. And
Yeah.
like, and you're like,
Yeah.
how do I help this girl? And He's like, this. And you're like,
Yes.
oh, okay.
Yes.
Being
Yes.
able to have
Yeah.
both of that, like that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And most people, I think most people want to be listened to. right?
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody
Absolutely.
has a story to tell. And I would, encourage you, I would encourage everybody, like, when's the last time you asked somebody to tell you their story? Like people want to be seen and they want to be heard and they want to be valued. And just by asking them to tell you their story means a lot. Like being invited onto your podcast, like you wanted to know me. And that
Mm-hmm.
is really significant to me. And so, yeah, so thank you for inviting me onto your podcast, my first podcast ever.
First one. I love it. I'm
Yeah.
happy. I'm happy I got to be the first one.
Yeah,
It's
me too.
amazing.
Me too.
One last thing and I'll get you out of here with when you talked about like your prayer and your relationship with God to kind of help guide you through those situations, has there
Yeah.
been a Bible verse or a part of scripture that has been
Yes.
with you throughout this whole process?
Yes. Yes, always. It is Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. Cuz I'm a doer. I'll fix every problem you bring to me. And so I have to constantly remind myself to be still and let God be God. And what I just described, when I'm in the presence of people and God, that's that. I'm still. I'm not trying to fix. I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm listening and I'm asking questions and letting God be at work, in me, through me, and in that person and through the person that's sitting across from me. And so be still and know that I am God, because we don't have to be. He doesn't ask us to be God. He doesn't need us to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, thank you so much again for taking the time to be on here. I know you're a busy lady, so
So welcome.
it means a lot. It was
I
a fun
appreciate it.
conversation, and I know that you are a leader to many, an inspiration to many, and like I know there's a lot of young women out there who are probably struggling with stuff that you have conquered and gone through. So it's going to be really cool to see what God has for you moving forward. So when do you? So it's Wednesday nights at Timberwood now. People can see you if they want to come listen to what you
Yep.
got. And
Yep. Wednesday nights, just 2 weeks ago on the 8th of January, we started studying through the book of Hosea. And that'll go through just right before Easter, Wednesday nights at 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And we stream live. And so if people can't be here in person, they can join us on YouTube and on our Facebook page.
awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. Well,
Thanks,
thank you so
Davey.
much again, Amy. I appreciate you, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to more conversations in the future with you. I think this is
Sounds
the
great.
beginning of a beautiful friendship.
I hope so.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Yeah.